back vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe. And today I'm very excited to welcome Lon W to the show. Sobriety has been a way of life for Lon since April 28th, 1979, an amazing 45 years and counting. His journey began at just 17 years old in Marion, Iowa, and has taken him across the world, always finding the hand of AA wherever he went. A proud veteran, thank you for your service, Lon. Lon served 20 years as an Army helicopter pilot and an Air Force fighter pilot before becoming a commercial airline captain, a role he's held for 25 years. He's been married for 41 years, raised 3 incredible daughters, and is a proud grandfather. Outside of work and family, Lon enjoys racing cars, home improvement, music, and reading. Through life's highs and lows, including recent personal challenges, he continues to lean on God and the fellowship of AA. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. How are you doing today, Lon?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be here after our scheduling back and forth. It's
I love it,
and be in the moment.
I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time. So you, this is kind of new to me because you got sober very young, and so can you take us back to what life looked like before you went to your first AA meeting?
Yeah, I wish I had some horror story, some sort of tragic reason why I became an addict and alcoholic at such a young age. But I really don't. It's unless it just was something that was born into me, which I kind of think it probably was.
Yeah.
I grew up with a wonderful family. My mom and dad, my dad recently passed away, and they were married at 65 years at his passing, and they were just good, supportive parents. 3 brothers besides myself, and we had grandparents, extended family, and every opportunity that I could ever want for myself. And I think as I look back at it, there was just sort of something in me that was always looking for something more. And I know what that is now, and it took some years before I could put a name to it, but it was just generally it was fear. And there's something in my soul that said, it looks okay, but it's not okay. Things are not going to be okay unless you make them okay. And in my effort to make them okay, as Bill likes to describe it, was like a boomerang that came back to cut me to ribbons. And I found that the first thing that really made me okay was alcohol, and that was at an extremely young age. When I was a little kid, there was drinking in the family and it was generally around social events, and there was some intoxication. I remember a camping trip when the grown-ups got drunk and stuff, and it kind of shocked me at first, and it looked like it might be a lot of fun. And I was probably 5, 6 years old at this time. But I also carried that fear with me. And one of my earliest memories is actually going to preschool. I walked down to the preschool that my older brother had gone to. And I remember the teacher coming up to me, smiling really big, looking me right in the face and say, "Oh, you're Lon, Todd's your older brother. He told us all about you." And at preschool age, I was just filled with fear. What did he say? Oh my gosh. So there was something in me that was definitely in need of something to feel that fear for the earliest ages. And, I'd taken sips off the grandparents or parents' beers, or whatever. But I never really sought that stuff out, and or thought that that would be a good solution. In fact, that's very anti-drug, like you would be at sixth grade or something like that. And yet there was something in me that was really ready for it, and it displayed itself in kind of crazy behavior as a kid. It was like if the kids were climbing trees, I was as high as you could get in the tree. If we were going to go out and do something, it had to be exciting. I was going to climb the power lines, or we swiped a big spool that the electric company uses to wrap wire on. And it was big, it had like 4-foot wheels on the sides, knock out a couple boards. And I was the guy that the neighbors would bring over. Hey, come on, man, get in this thing. We're going to roll you down the hill. And I would do stuff like that because I liked that excitement. I think it was intense enough to step over that feeling of fear that I carried around the whole time. And so it's strange that I would seek out things that are fear evoking to give myself a feeling of control over the fear that I lived with really on a constant basis.
You said you had a pretty good childhood. I mean, you grew up, and you said your parents were together for a long time, and I'm so sorry to hear about your father. I know how difficult that is. But what was Marion, Iowa like? I never been, so I have to.
Yeah. Well, it was. I think we had 18,028 population. So it was right next to Cedar Rapids, which is probably a couple 100,000. So you could go out and find, excitement or fun or culture if you wanted to. But it was just very small townish. We honestly did not have a lock on any of our doors from the time I was growing up till probably until I was in high school. And it was, come in when the street lights come on, and all the neighbor kids, if we weren't fighting each other, we were best friends forever. So it was really good growing up. It was I went to the same school with the same friends all the way till I graduated high school, and it was to me it was storybook, and I still regard it as such. And I wish I could blame somebody besides myself for my addiction, but I think really there was something inside of me that was what seemed like a curse at the time turned out to be a blessing, as we know how that can be in sobriety. And I was in junior high, and I was going on my English class. Ernie Miller was my teacher, and I get up to the top of the stairs, and one of my buddies sticks out his hand, and in his hand are 2 pills. And I asked, "Well, what are they?" And he said, "Well, this one's a sleeper, and this one's a downer." To this day, I don't know what they were. Based on, early 70s, probably Valium and maybe a Placidil or something like that, and or a Seconal or something. And he gave them to me, and I thought, well, I'm not gonna take drugs. And he walked away, but immediately I thought, well, I'll take one. Go over to the drinking fountain. I took one, and then the second thought was, what if that doesn't do anything? I better take them both. So I took them both. And I went to Ernie Miller's English class. And next thing I know, he's down next to me, face real close to mine, trying to wake me up, saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I remember walking out of that class just in this haze and stumbling, and I did not like it. And I was never, ever going to do anything like that again. And until and I was completely sober for at least a few weeks until I had the next opportunity to do something like that. And it was actually at my spring dance in 7th grade. And I'd asked this girl, Tammy Herb. Oh, she was the most beautiful 7th grader you've ever seen. And she actually said, "Yeah, I'll go to the dance with you." So we went to this dance, and I bought her the corsage. It was blue daisies with baby's breath and everything. It was going to be like probably the girl I'd marry and have kids with and spend eternity together. And we went to this dance, and she sat on the other side of the table, would not talk to me, wouldn't dance. It was horrible. It was tragic. And she sat there and picked the daisies petals off and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. And my buddy, who I was going to get a ride home with, kind of taps me on the shoulder and he says, I know what you need. And his brother picked us up and bought us a 12-pack of beer for the four of us, my friend, his date, Tammy, and me. And we went to his brother's house. And somehow, out of that 12-pack, I think I got 6 or 8 of them. And that was the greatest thing I'd ever experienced in my life. It gave me that sense of ease and comfort. I was as good as anybody else that I was always afraid of. I'm sure that Tammy probably thought that I was the best date she'd ever been on. So that was my introduction into true intoxication. That for me, it made me 6 foot tall, still wrapped in leather and bulletproof, and I felt no fear. And uh, I would have done that for the rest of my life, regardless of the consequences, if it had continued to work that way for me.
I guess, I mean, you attended your first AA meeting, wasn't it? Like 16, and I mean, it was early. And so, what was kind of the turning point, so to speak, that kind of got you moving in that direction?
Well, the progression, as you would expect at that young age, was extremely rapid. And I threw myself 100% into recapturing that feeling that I had of intoxication. And it didn't matter by what means. If I could get a hold of a drug, I would take a drug. If it was weed, I started arranging my friendships and stuff to the people that would be able to get stuff like that. Start hanging out with older kids, and every opportunity I got to get drunk, I did. And I was amazed at really how easy it was. So from seventh grade to the summer of my junior year, I stayed intoxicated every opportunity I got. And as I got into high school and as my friends and my group kind of began to change, the kind of use and drinking became pretty bad, and the consequences started pretty quick. I was never bad at school. I was always given the old thing, you could really do okay if you just apply yourself. And I was never really into it, and I never did really apply myself. But what was a B, C student quickly turned into a DF student. And by the time I was a junior in high school, I'd flunked out of high school. The uh, the friends, my lower companions that I'd sought out, all of a sudden didn't want to hang out with me. I was too erratic. I thought I was the nicest guy in the world, but at some point in the night, if I was around a big crowd, somebody had me by the throat explaining things to me, and I just couldn't shut the hell up. And I uh, I became much more isolated, and I became my need to procure my relief was it my standards, my ethical standards began to drop pretty quick, and it involved breaking into the neighbors' houses, stealing from my brothers, my parents, even my our friends. And I probably had a prescription bottle from everybody in the neighborhood's medicine cabinet in my dresser drawer there at the end. And it didn't matter what it was. I would take it until I would get an effect, and it wasn't always the effect I was looking for. And I having seems like there's a lot of pharmacists in the programs, and maybe if I applied myself, I'd have been a pharmacist. But I told him some of the stuff that I was taking. He's like, "Oh, that's a heart pill. You should have never been taking. That could have killed you." But it didn't matter. I even went and I heard, "Oh, you can eat this plant. It's a poisonous plant, but if you take it in moderate, you can kind of control it." And I find out later it's got arsenic in it, and it's like, so anything that changed the way I felt, and it was critical from the moment I woke up to the moment I passed out that I shut all that down, and I guess, the obvious question is your poor parents, what were they thinking when they were seeing all this, and they did see all this, and they pleaded and they begged and they threatened and they disciplined and they tried to straighten me up. But I had a real ace in the hole, and that was my younger brother, because I'd be coming home looking at a report card with all failing grades or something, and I'd look up, and in front of the car, in front of the house is like 4 cop cars, and they'd be bringing my younger brother out, and so my poor parents had to put up a lot of attention into my other brothers. My older brother now, he was drinking and drugging just like I was, but he seemed to be able to handle it. He had he always had money. He had a quarter pound in the drawer, and he would turn that, so he was always able to smoke and do it for free. And he was a smart guy, hottest girlfriends you ever saw, and I wanted that, but he had a way of seeming to be able to keep it together, and yet I didn't. I was somewhere in between him and my younger brother, who at a very young age started his visits to different institutions, halfway houses, group homes, even jails and prison for quite a while. And I'm very grateful to say that he has got over 20 years of sobriety. In fact, on April 9th, he'll have 21 years of sobriety. And he got sober in prison. And when he got out, he stayed sober and got active in working the program. And, there's that talk in the doctor's opinion about, where this guy, I think Silkworth was talking about Hank Parkhurst when he got sober, and he came back and visited him, and he said it's like I recognized his appearance, but there everything else changed. And to see that miracle in my brother, he is absolutely one of the true heroes in my recovery, to see how he changed. That older brother, uh, his progression was a little bit slower, but he lost everything too. Both of my brothers lost custody of their children, lost their homes. Um, my older brother, he was facing a lot of time for basically drugs and guns. And he came to me and he asked me, he'd been sober about 3 months. And he came to me and he asked, how do I pick a good sponsor? He was going to NA, and he seemed very serious about it. And I told him my advice was to pick somebody that's worked the steps, and somebody is a closed mouth friend you can trust. And he made it through Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And on January 7th, I got a phone call from my dad that he had overdosed on the bathroom floor in their house. And so I lost him, and that was, I guess I was about 25 years sober at the time. And the thing that I took away from that, as I look back at my brother's experiences, who did another 20 years of drinking and drugging, and my experience, there's that old saying that we either get sobered up, covered up, or locked up, and my brother, that's the story of my other two brothers. And so grateful that I made it to the sobered up. I flunked out of high school by the time I was 16. I mean, I was still showing up, but I didn't do a single lick of homework. I was taking freshman classes as a junior, and I still wasn't going to pass them. And I started really, really hating myself. All my friends had pretty much abandoned me. I was a thief, a liar. I was constantly in pursuit of intoxication, and I got to the point where the real solution, and I found a lot of comfort in it, was thinking about how I was going to kill myself. And I went through all these iterations on how I could do it. Am I going to do it in the bathroom with a knife and tuck the towel on the floor? I don't want to make a big mess. And finally, I came up with the best idea was to go out into the garage, put a big trash bag over my head and stick a shotgun in my mouth and blow my head off. And, I only had a 410 shotgun. If you know short shotguns, that's kind of like the BB gun of shotguns. And I was thinking, no, I'll wait till I can get a hold of something bigger. And, but I would wake up every morning in complete despair. And the only hope I would have was, how am I going to get high or drunk today? And, man, and that lasted for a period of probably close to a year. And during that year, I tried over and over again to stop or moderate. And I remember making it almost 2 weeks once. And I was sitting in study hall in the 11th grade, having not drank or drugged in almost 2 weeks, just staring at this cinder block wall, thinking, if this is what it's going to be like, I can't do this. I can't live like this. And it wasn't too long after that that really, I think it was the grace of God that stepped in. I remember coming home from a particularly bad night, and that numb brain, despair, oh God, how can I go on kind of feeling. And I always believed in God. I was raised going to church, not real regularly, but when I was there, I felt like, yeah, this is something real. And so that kind of came back to me as I was walking home, and I just said, God, please help me if you will, which I think is probably the most common alcoholic prayer that there is. And it was like something immediately happened, and it's to this day it's as real in me as it was 46 years ago. And I remember it was like it almost felt like somebody took my chin and raised my head up, and I saw these sparrows sitting on a limb. And the only verse I think I ever remember from church was that, not a sparrow falls from the sky that he doesn't see it. And you're far more important than many sparrows. And that came to mind. And then it was again like somebody turned my chin, and my eyes went right to a bumper sticker on a car that said, "Wise men still seek him." And and that hit me pretty powerfully. So the only thing that I did right, I think from then for about the next 2 weeks, maybe a month, was just keep praying that prayer. God, please help me if you will. I certainly didn't stay sober. But at one point, I got in trouble at a school activity, and the police were looking for me, and I was hiding. And one of the counselors in the school actually grabbed me, got me aside, says, I'll get you home if you promise to come see me on Monday." And so she got me home, and I went in and saw her. And I remember she was sitting there across her desk there talking to me. And she said just the most ridiculous thing to me. She said, "Do you think you could be an alcoholic? There are teenage alcoholics." And I literally laughed out loud. And I really believed that it was impossible at 16 years old to be an alcoholic. Um, but she ended up passing to me a number, some guy by the name of Tom F. He was a quote, young guy in AA, and to give him a call. And I told her with the most sincere conviction in my heart that, well, I'll keep this in mind, but I'm gonna do this. I really do want to get sober, and I want to get my life turned around. This is no way to live. And it was the first time that I really felt like, um, it wasn't the first time that somebody actually came to me with compassion and care. I know my parents did, but it's the first time I was able to receive that from somebody. So with all my heart, I wanted to get sober for her and show her that I could turn my life around. And the next couple of weeks were horrible, absolutely horrible. And it was around Thanksgiving of 1978, and I had reached that point where I pulled that phone number out of the drawer I had it stashed in, and I called this guy. And I remember that phone call very distinctly. I said, "My name is Lon, and I think I got a problem with alcohol and drugs." And what he said, I think is one of the most powerful things that we have as a gift in the program. So, yeah, Lon, I've been there before. And I knew really at that point I was not alone. He said, well, there's a meeting, a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning. I can pick you up and we'll go to that. And that was at a place called the Industrial Club in Marion, Iowa. It was in the basement of an organ repair shop. And I just love the way that sounds. But, now that I'm going to quit drinking forever, Saturday night, I might as well go out strong. And man, I went out strong. And he picked me up in the morning. I was still partly drunk and certainly hungover. And we went into that meeting at the Industrial Club, and the door opened wide. And it looked like a reunion of like Civil War veterans, man. It was the oldest people on earth all gathered in one little basement. And and yet they all jumped up, and here I am, 16 years old, walking into AA. And I remember this one guy, they called him the old goat. And if these people are calling this guy the old goat, yeah, but he was a caricature of a man, just a beautiful human being. And he just grabs my arm and starts pumping my arm. Welcome, welcome. We're just a bunch of drunks. And everybody in the room laughed. And, I felt like embarrassed. It's like, oh, don't embarrass anybody for my sake. But that was the first time I really heard the music of AA, which is that beautiful laughter that we can have. And if nothing else, I wanted that. These people seem to be happy. So an old timer by the name of Tex Claude Gregory. He had like 25 years of sobriety, which back in the 70s and stuff, there wasn't a lot of these 30, 40-year sober people, partly because of the age when people were getting sober, but also, AA hadn't been around but 35 years. And so he sets these pancakes down in front of me, these big old plate of eggs and bacon, and none of that looks good, man. It didn't. And I sat there chewing that pancake for about 5 minutes. I couldn't get myself to swallow it. I look up and he's grinning from ear to ear, and he just says, "Lon, you don't have to eat that." And he took it from me. And I remember we went around that meeting, and I don't remember a whole lot about what was said, except there was a lot of laughter, and people seemed genuinely happy. And there's that conditional statement that we hear read a lot in AA meetings, and how it works. It talks about, if you want what we have. I didn't know the full of what they had, but I knew they had enough enjoyment in life that they could be laughing and enjoying each other's company without drinking. And that was more than I had. So the only thing, again, that I did right for about the next 5 months was keep coming back, because the idea of quitting drinking forever at 16 years old was insane. It's like, no, I can't picture that. I just need to kind of get this in control to where I can live my life. But it seemed okay that, they're 70, 80 plus years old at this meeting. They're going to die in a few years anyway. I might have to live another 50, 60, maybe 70 years. And I could not fathom life without alcohol. And so the thing I kept doing was coming back and trying these control experiments. I can't do the hard drugs, but I can still smoke weed, or I get too paranoid on weed. I always start drinking. And so I got to smoke hash. I can't, and I just crazy iterations of trying to stay intoxicated to find sobriety that I could live with. And it was like, it wasn't that I didn't want it. I really wanted it. And so I went to a lot of meetings, probably 3+ a week. I had a sponsor, a tremendous man. Tom became my sponsor. And we would working on the steps. We would pray together. Took the third step with him, and I was about halfway through a fourth step, and I just could not go a day without drinking or smoking dope or something. I remember sitting in a meeting one time here, and this lady, Patty, she was a counselor at treatment center, very spiritual lady, just a tremendous, kind soul. saying something, and I don't remember what it was at this point, but it involved the words cold beer. And that's all I could think about the rest of the meeting. And I could not make it home from the AA meeting without getting drunk. And I'm thinking, good Lord, if AA is my trigger, I am a sick man indeed. And I really began to wonder, what's wrong with me that I can't get this thing. I've been in AA, 5 months. I haven't got anything like a week sober. I would always come back and confess my sins to my group and stuff, and they were always so kind to me and welcoming. And I remember one time coming back, and we had this crazy guy in our group. We all know who we're talking about. We all got one of those guys that the chairman kind of has to settle him down about 15 minutes into his 2 minute share. And old Donnie McGonigal, he was just a tremendous man too. Now that I look back on him, had really a very low bottom. And I'd come to that meeting that day and confessed that I'd gotten drunk the night before, and I just don't know how I'm gonna stop drinking, is what I said. And a couple of people said, "Will you just keep coming back? We love you, man. Keep coming back." And Donnie got his turn to talk, and he looked right at me and he says, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll stop drinking. When they slam that jail cell on you, you'll stop drinking just like that. Or when they're, putting your diapers on you 3 times a day in a mental institution, you won't even think about drinking. Or when they're shoveling that dirt on your casket, there's no DTs, no withdrawals. You stop drinking just like that. But if you don't take that first drink, you can't get drunk." And I thought to myself, he's absolutely right. I just can't take the first drink and I won't get drunk. And so when I left that meeting, I got drunk with no intention to do it, not thinking about it, not wanting to do it, but I got drunk. And I remember going to my sponsor after that. It left such a powerful impact on me that I could believe, I could know intellectually, I could have the desire to stop drinking and certainly the need to stop drinking, but I just couldn't go the whole day without drinking. And I was talking to my sponsor, and that's when he really began to explain to me the nature of alcoholism and how it isn't just that once we start, we can't control how much it is it's like it says in the book, we are without defense against that first drink. There's something in me, there's a mental set that precedes that first drink that makes that drink inevitable. And that's where the true powerlessness lies. And then he said something kind of strange. He said, "I don't want you to ask God for help to stay sober. I don't want you to ask God to give you the strength to stay sober or to show you what to do to get sober. When you get up in the morning, I want you to get on your knees and ask God to keep you sober. Because for you, Lon, that's what it's going to take." And that made sense to me, that I was indeed powerless over alcohol. Not just the fifth one, but the first one, that I could no longer choose not to drink, that mental insanity was so ingrained into my thinking that I had no choice. I'd lost the power of choice over the first drink. And I began praying that prayer on April 28th of 1979. And I prayed that prayer. I may have missed by accident or busyness or whatever, but I've been praying that prayer ever since. And that's been almost 46 years of continuous sobriety. And, if I can't keep myself sober, I can only give credit to God for it, because I haven't had a drink or a drug in that length of time.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it really is. What kept you, I guess, early on, that early months of sobriety, actually being sober, like what kept you connected, Lon?
That's a great question, because I think probably the biggest thing was the fellowship. Even though, we're a group of people that would not normally mix, but I felt such a comfort with them. And there was one particular old lady there. Her name was Phyllis Hauser. God rest her soul. She was just a beautiful lady. She weighed about 60 pounds until she took off her glasses, which weighed about, 30 pounds. Great big old lenses. And she was just this frail, tiny lady. And she was so kind to me. And I got into the habit of walking her home after the meetings. I think somebody put me in charge of that. And I would take her up this, she lived like on the fourth floor of this old apartment building. And these stairs were steep and they had little landings every, floor. And she would make it up to the next landing. She'd sit there and start talking to me. And we would have these discussions and stuff. And I'd get her to the top of the stairs. And I remember one time she just sat there and looked at me right through those big old thick glasses, patting me on the cheek, saying, "Lonnie, I pray for you every day." And I swear to you, Joe, I could see through those glasses and see the face of God. I mean, it was like, that's what my heart was really desiring, is something bigger and deeper than anything I'd ever experienced in life or found in my drinking and carousing and drugging. And I think the thing that really kept me back was the kindness of those guys that just pat me on the back and encourage me. And and also it was over and over again going to meetings and hearing the success of the people that had genuinely worked the program made me continue to want what they had.
Well, that's pretty cool. So how did because I know we talked, or in your intro and some of your story, I know you were in the military. So how did AA help you navigate military life? Because
Yeah, I just, I look back at my life and like nobody's more amazed than me. A lot of people go, "Oh, you're 63, you've been sober 45 plus years." And how, I look back at that and I go, yeah, trust me, nobody's more amazed than me. I was sober about a year and a half, um, and I knew I had to do something. I ended up graduating high school, just barely. Um, I took, I got sober the summer of my junior year or the spring of my junior year, and I came back and there was a plan to get me caught up. And the classes I was taking were not like honors, uh, you know, college prep stuff. It was algebra one that I had flunked 3 times previously. And the math class that I ended up taking was like math for daily living, to how to balance a checkbook. It's actually a very good class. I enjoyed that. But I ended up getting all the credits except for 3 classes, and they said, "We'll let you graduate," because I did it extremely well being sober, um, even though they were freshman classes. Um, but they said, "We'll let you walk across the stage and give you a diploma and everything, but you got to take these 3 classes during the summer," which I did. And I ended up graduating, and it's funny because I got a copy of my old high school diploma or transcript, and I graduated with a 1.86 GPA, which is like, and I didn't realize this until I started really pursuing the workforce, is that you can actually round that up to 1.9 just so it looks better on a resume. And but I graduated high school, and it was like, well, I'm not going to college. And it's like, you know, do I go to Yale or do I join the Army? And it's like, well, it's probably a pretty easy choice here. But I ended up talking to a recruiter, and I was a musician growing up. Well, no, I'll rephrase that. I was a drummer, and I wanted to keep playing drums. And this Army recruiter said, "You can play drums in the Army." Really? So I took an audition. And I did well enough that they said, "Sure, yeah, come on in, and we'll let you play drums in the Army, be an Army bandsman." And so I raised my right hand and swore in, and I had about 6 months till I actually went to basic training. And I went back to AA, and man, I heard everything. And I talked to my sponsor about it, of course, and other people in AA. And most people were pretty supportive. And then there were a few that were like, "Oh my God, you got to get out of that somehow. You cannot go into the Army." That's when my drinking got really bad. And I'd hear all these terrible stories. And so, man, I was nervous about it, very nervous. And, I sound real old, but back in the day, we had these old books from the AA central office that had all the meetings that were registered in New York. They had a phone number and a contact with every one of them. And I remember there was there was a meeting, and I was going to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri for basic training, and there was a contact for that in there. So I had it down, I'd written it, and when I got to my first day of basic training, I was there in the transient barracks, and I still had my long hair. I had my big book with me, and I put a white cover on it so nobody could see it. And I had my, I don't know, it was either 10 cents or 25 cents back then to use a payphone. There's a payphone right outside of my building. And I remember that building number was 232. So I called that number that I got out of the service directory. And he said, I said, I just got here to the reception station and I'm in AA and I got your number out of the book. Do you guys have a meeting tonight? And he says, where are you? And I said, I'm at building 232 in the reception station. Okay. Are you at the payphone? Yeah. I said, turn around. And I turn around and the building right next to me is a guy on the phone waving at me. And he's saying, the meeting starts in about a half hour. Come on in. I mean, I didn't plan any of that. I did the work. I got the number and whatnot. And in some small way, that was all I needed to do to allow God to miracle in my life. So from my very first day in the Army, I went to a meeting, and I got to do some wonderful things in the military. I didn't think I'd be suited for it. I did well in basic training. I did well in my advanced training in music. And then I went to my first permanent duty station and immediately got active in AA. And it's a tremendous thing. And if there's anybody listening to this that has recently moved to a new AA group, a new town, hang in there, man. It is so hard sometimes to move away from your close friends, especially the ones you may have gotten sober with, but just get through the hard part because there's so many more joys and that awaiting you. Hang in there, really, because it was hard to move away from the people that I was close to, the guy that had heard my fourth and fifth step, and the people that I worked the program with. I had a sponsee back there that was still staying sober, and he was doing great. I miss those people so tremendously, but I really did throw myself into AA, and that's when I first started really getting into service. I'd been the treasurer of a group before, but they actually in about a year made me the GSR of a group. We travel all over the district, visit the meetings there, and eventually I made close friends there, and that was pretty good. The other thing that happened was I started going back to college and just taking night classes. And I remember my first college class, I was so freaked out. It was a writing class. I was so freaked out, and I said, I can't do college. And she said, just write a 2-paragraph thing that so I can get an idea. And I was so locked up, so afraid that I couldn't do it. I couldn't write 2 paragraphs. And I went to her afterwards and said, I'm sorry, I'm scared. And if you'll give me a second, I'll write this and bring it to you tomorrow. She wasn't very happy about that, but I ended up going home and writing about the Serenity Prayer. And I brought it back to her, and she said, this is very good. You would have got an A, but I'm only giving you a B. And that was the beginning of my college career, too. Another great thing that happened there, some of my buddies in the AA group down in Lawton, Oklahoma said, hey, let's go up to Oklahoma City. They're having a dance at the Western Club, a nice AA club up there. And, I'm single. I'm thinking, wow, what could be better than that? So we all went up there. And here's some advice for the guys in AA. Do you know how to get lucky at an AA dance? Go home alone. So I didn't know that advice then. Actually, though, it was a big blessing because I did meet a lady there and we hit it off pretty good. Non-alcoholic. She was actually there with her sister. And very short time after that, we actually did get married. And I am still married to that lady. Now, there's more to that story. I'll fill you in with that. But it was a tremendous 40-year marriage of being able to raise 3 awesome daughters. And Now I've got 4 grandkids and one on the way due in September, and just an exciting journey from my first day in the military. I got out for a very short time to get going back to school, and through some circumstances again that I did not orchestrate. In fact, there was a National Guard recruiter who was trying to get my brother in the Guard. And I walked in on him and he grabs me and pulls me outside. I said, "Get rid of this guy. I ain't going in the Guard." And so I went over and I started talking to him. And I just threw out just this crazy idea that, hey, what would be the chance of me going to pilot training, being a helicopter pilot in the Guard? He says, "Well, let me find out." And, I'd already actually asked the question to some reserve recruiters, and they were like, "Oh, you got to join up and spend a few years in as a crew chief, and maybe if they select you." And so I just threw that out there, kind of thinking it'd get rid of him. But 3 months later, I'm going to pilot training in the Army to become a helicopter pilot. And again, it's something that I always wanted to do, but I figured it was for somebody else, somebody that maybe either deserved it more, was smarter, or something like that. But I ended up going to pilot training, and I did very well at it. It was like somebody once described it as God suiting us to our talents, and it fit me well. It fit that nature in me that likes excitement. It fit that nature in me that likes challenging things, and learning about something that I really liked. I found out was easy. Um, and still the same thing when I'm going through helicopter training down in Fort Rucker, Alabama. It was a busy time, but I was able to break out, and go to meetings there locally. And I have very fond memories of that meeting. The guy that ended up giving me my wings was a World War II ace, who was in AA, and he's pretty much a celebrity down there. He's long since passed, but to get my wings from a guy of that stature was a real blessing too. And so I got out of the active duty Army, back in the Guard, flying helicopters as a part-time job, going to college, like 20 credit hours a semester, just so overloaded because I really wanted to go fly in the Air Force too, and learn how to fly fixed wing aircraft. And so I was like really on the cusp of being able to get in under the age limit. And so I was taking just double loads in college and all that stuff and really focused. And I'm just so grateful for all the support my wife gave me at the time. And it was tough. At this point, we had 2 children, and we were really living on a ramen diet. I was going to school, just working part time, and 2 kids. But God did provide for us that whole time, and I was able in college, even with that load and the family, to really knock out 3 years of college in a year and a half, and with a 4.0 GPA. The guy that had to take Algebra 1 3 times, and so I um, a lot of it too. I spent a lot of time um, in AA meetings, not so much at meetings per se, but involved with people that were in AA. A lot of fellowship, and continued to focus on trying to live the steps in my life. And I applied for the Air Force, and they accepted me. And I moved down to I went through officer training school, and I moved down to Wichita Falls, Texas, to start my pilot training. And I got involved in an AA group there. And I would say this is the closest I've probably ever been to having a slip. Things look good. My dreams are coming together. And I go to these meetings, and the guys at the meetings annoyed the hell out of me. It was like, shut up, and a couple guys in the group that were like, they just seemed like they knew it all, and weren't they weren't friendly like my group up in Iowa. And I remember the thought coming into my head. I'd missed a couple meetings, and I needed to spend more time with my family. And the thought went in my head. It was like, you know, you really don't need those guys. You don't have anything in common with them. And it was like, thank you, God, for the sanity that came to me after that. It was like, the only thing that I need in common with them is that we have found a way together to not drink one day at a time. And so I recommitted myself to that group and kept really active in it. And I made it through pilot training there, made it through some advanced training in a couple other places, and I was shipped off to Japan, which really was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I was flying F-16s in Japan. I'm a fighter pilot in a fighter squadron. And of course, I'm practicing this program of genuine humility, right? And we all know fighter pilots are the most arrogant species to ever exist. You know, and I would look at these poor souls in my squadron thinking, oh my God, such an ego. You know, uh, don't you know that there can only be one world's greatest fighter pilot? And of course, we know who that was. But yeah, I and I'm grateful for that experience too. You know, I mean, I was King Kong at that point in my life, and you know, things were happening good, and we were having a tremendous experience in AA. And you would think that flying a Mach 2 9G supersonic fighter jet at 50,000 feet would be like the pinnacle of my experience there. But you know, the real pinnacle, as I look back, and what really matters to me today, was a guy. His name was Takagahara Hiraharu. It took me months to be able to pronounce that. But everybody in Japan had these nicknames, but we called him Blind. And Blind asked me to be a sponsor. And he lived off base, but we had a little meeting on base, and he started coming to the meeting on base. He could barely speak English. He actually spoke English better than he realized, but he was taking English classes so he could learn to do AA better. And the nearest meeting to him was 6 hours round trip. So it was like, if you want what we have, you know, I'm willing to go to any lengths to get it. He did. And we would sit there and I would say, you know, try to teach him the stuff out of the book. And he would write it down in katakana and kanji. And then he'd go and he'd write it out in English and he'd bring it back to me. And it was like, this is what you said to me. And not even close. I mean, we're like miles apart. But you know, he got sober. He got sober. And 3 years later, as my family and I were leaving that place, his family invited us over, which is kind of a big deal in Japan. It's not like, hey, come on over, throw some dogs on the grill. She had made this just magnificent meal, truly one of the finest meals I've ever had. And his father had prepared this speech in English. And they were fairly well-to-do people. And we're all sitting around this little table on the floor and we're eating this just amazing food. And his father gets out this thing and reads me this letter that he'd written in gratitude to me for helping get his son sober. And I think back to the days that we sat transcribing the big book back and forth and how these two ideas would never meet. I knew that it was the grace of God. And as I was pulling out of that driveway with my family, his whole family's lined up there and they give us this big honorific bow as we drive away. And it was like the feeling of, oh my God, this truly is God using me. It's nothing I did. It is God in my inadequacy using me for his good purpose. And to see him get sober and to see his life turn around and his family reunited, it was truly one of the biggest blessing of sponsorship that I've experienced yet in the program. And so we left there and I went to a couple other places out in Nevada and West Texas. And every place I went, again, that was always the first thing, like that day in basic training. I'd get there, I would contact AA, and it truly is a host of friends, you know. And just yesterday, I got a text from a guy that I was in the Army band with 45 years ago, or however long 1981 was, you know. It's tremendous. And, you know, some of those people that I met along the way, thank you, Facebook, you know, It's like I get messaged by some guy who goes, man, I've been sober 30 years now, and yet you're such a help to me. And do you remember when we got down on our knees and did the third step prayer together? And I'm like, no, I don't, but I'm so glad we did, And I even visit them. There's recently went on a trip in my current job, and I visited him, and he was the old timer in his group, and I'm like, wow, this is just amazing to see the history being built and to be able to look back. And so yeah, AA, and I don't mean to slight NA at all because it saved my brother's life. But when I got sober, there weren't any NA meetings in Marion, Iowa. They shortly started after I got sober, but I just got sober in AA, and I found that was so available to me, whether I was in Misawa, Japan, or deployed to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, or Singapore or Malaysia or wherever I happen to be, all over Europe. I've had the blessing of being able to walk into an AA meeting and having that common thing that we have, which is that we found a way together to stay sober.
That's amazing, and you've had just some amazing experiences with AA meetings all over the world because of the service you and profession you've been in. So if you could give a message to someone struggling with addiction, today, especially a young person, what would you say, Lon?
I would say that and I say this kind of looking back at myself. Just give yourself a break. We don't know how sick we are when we first come into the program until we have a chance to look back at ourselves. I'd have been a lot nicer to myself internally if I'd have known how sick I really was. And it takes a while for that to be repaired and to just keep coming. I mean, that's the only thing I did right for a long time was keep coming to meetings. And don't give up on the program, because the program seems like some academic exercise to get sober, but it's really not. It's a journey to find the God of our understanding that'll relieve that obsession and give us a life unlike we've really dreamed, far more than I could have ever dreamed for myself.
Yeah, well said. Well, I can't let you go, Lon, without us doing our rapid fire questions, my friend. So no pressure.
Yeah. I haven't been sharing this for the last month.
I was going to say, telling a pilot no pressure, I kind of seem silly at this point in my life. But, that's okay. But all right, if you are ready.
Ready.
What is your favorite recovery slogan?
I think there but for the grace of God. Now, it's not an AA slogan, but I remember at the Fellowship Club in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, above the chairman's table, there's a sign that somebody had carved that said, there but for the grace of God. And I would sit there and read that, daydream instead of listening to the meeting. But there but for the grace of God, I just assumed that it meant, well, God's graceful in the way he does things. But then as I started learning about grace, it's unmerited favor or undeserved love. And I really do look at my life in sobriety as the product of grace, not of achievement, but of grace.
Yeah. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
I guess it's a think. Because, man, at 3:00 in the morning, I can do that real well. And I love it when I go to a clubhouse or something and, they got the slogans all lined up, and there's a correct way to hang those. It's live and let live. Easy does it. But for the grace of God, think. First things first. So if you're daydreaming during a meeting and you read the top line of them, it says, live easy, but think first. And I love it when I walk into the clubhouse and the think sign is turned upside down. And so that just reminds me of where my thinking belongs.
What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Oh, goodness. I guess, honestly, I think it's powerlessness,
Hmm.
which is ironic. But it's when I got it, when I got this, whether it's how I'm living my life or, that first drink or pill or whatever it is, it's the realization that I am powerless and that my power has to come from something outside of me that just turns everything in my favor.
Well said. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Ah, I would have to say, kind of going back to what I said before, you know, don't be so hard on yourself, man. You're just a
Yeah.
struggling human being, and this too shall pass. And yeah, you have a lot to live for, and there's a lot to look forward to.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Oh, I just recently just heard it. Soul Shine. It's originally Allman Brothers tune.
Ah,
Government Mule did a great version of it, and I like to crank that thing up about 90 decibels. And that's a great song. Great song, Soul Shine.
nice. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Mm, got myself. Wow, I would have to say, I guess, I guess it's a form of surrender to try not to have to figure things out because I got a degree in management. I work at a set of controls. Control is my thing, man. If I could just give myself a break and realize that I don't have to control the outcome out of everything,
Yeah.
that the world's not a hostile place. It really is a blessed place, and that I'm not walking this journey alone. To give myself that kind of confidence when because I'm still a fearful guy, and that old fear that troubled me as a preschool kids can still jump in there, and just the fear that or the faith that comes with the realization that you know uh, hereafter in this drama of life, He's going to be in charge,
Yeah.
and that I can trust in that.
What step do you love the most?
Sixth step. I know
What
that
step?
sounds kind of. I think the reason I like the sixth step the most is because it put me in touch with what I was trying to do in the third step.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, I take the third step. I'm going to make this decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God, and then I write these inventories. I talk about myself, and I get to the sixth step, and it's like, yeah, where it says in the 12th rule, the step that separates the men from the boys. This is where I'm either really trying to acquire whatever degree of perfection that God wants for me instead of something that I think is good enough to live
Yeah.
with. And so I like that.
What step do you love the least?
Hmm. It's kind of interesting. I half of the 12th step, which is actually, and I find it strange, and I hope I don't sound ungrateful or like a bad AA, is that I, I I don't like carrying the message and sponsoring people. Um, Not because I don't love to see their light come on in their eyes. I love that. And I love to see their lives turn around. And I gave a 45-year chip to my very first sponsee last Christmas. I love that. But I've seen so many people, honestly, when I shake their hand now and say, well, this is my phone number, call me anytime. Sometimes I feel like it's been nice talking to you. I'll
Yeah.
never hear from you again, never see you again. And I've buried a couple sponsees, and I hate that. You cannot. It's not that I think I can get them sober. I've proved that I can't. But it is so hard to build relationships, deep relationships, love each other, and then to see this disease, ravage them and kill them in some cases.
Yeah, I understand. I do. What is one of your favorite movies?
One of my favorites of all time is Elephant Man.
Great movie.
Directed by David Lynch.
Yeah, great movie.
It's weird, but it's odd. But I think what it says to me is, what does it mean to be human? And there's a bunch of examples of that through the movie. It's easy to look at and say, well, it's about a guy with a terrible disease. But it's really about many people who are involved with this guy who are discovering in themselves what it means to be human.
Yeah. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today, Lon. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. It's really been an honor and a great learning experience for me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Joe.
We have a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show in your favorite podcast app, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the, and don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and definitely share the episodes because somebody out there needs to hear this today. So thank you, Lon. Have a great day.
Thank you, Joe. You too. Thank you so much.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's experience, strength, and hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.